Okay, you're fine, John. Over you go. Off to you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Yeah. Well, hello again, everyone. 5-minute pitch on the market. Why did we set the market up? Because Acton's shopfront office is in between South Acton Estate, which is one of the biggest social housing estates in West London, with a lot of people on low income, unemployment, a lot of refugees, and then the actual Acton High Street was being run down. There's really not much going on there, and after doing some preparatory work, we thought that in consultation with local people, they said they wanted to have a market brought back to Acton again. The council renovated a square, which was a sort of good place to put the market. There was nothing in it, so we decided with the community that to get a market going would bring some life back into Acton Town Centre. Because the 3 objectives of Action Acton are to help unemployed people get jobs, to help them get education, training and qualifications, and to help them in self-employment, we linked that into bringing life back into Acton Town Centre. So the idea of the market is to give unemployed people a chance to set up in business. Not all the stores are started off by unemployed people. Some will be regular traders from other markets, and they help sort of create a good mix with the people starting up and people who've been going for some time. We've provided training for people in how to run a business and how to set up a market store. We actually set the market stores up. We pay someone to do it. That's actually quite a big cost, which is a bit of an issue with us, and something that we're trying to address. We have the great Vanessa, who's online, who's our supervisor, and we'll be able to answer lots of questions. And we run Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Saturday we've got about 30-35 stores, Friday about 25, and on Thursday it's still sort of developing, so we might be 12-15. Stallholders pay £25 for a double store, which is 2 tables in a tented area, £15 for a single store. We basically have been working on it now for 2.5-3 years. Overcome lots of sort of very practical problems from the weather, which is a major problem in this country, of course, and even more so up north, I should imagine. So we have to cope with heavy rain, wind. There's a bit of a wind vortex problem. So practically we've had to overcome those issues. There's not much footfall in the area, so that means that there's not necessarily lots of customers who are just passing by who would pop into the market. So it's very much a local market. It does bring different communities together, both in terms of old and young, different ethnic communities, because there's lots of communities in Acton. There's not just one community. Brings together people with a lot of money and people with hardly any money. Although the people with a lot of money is more difficult to attract because we've had sort of high-end stores and they haven't made much money, so they don't come back so often. Having said that, we've got jewellery, we've got some really nice sort of craft stores, we've got some good ethnic cooking stores. I goat curry and rice today, and our Korean visitors had Afro-Caribbean and Indian food, so they ate all of it, so they seem to enjoy it. And we have a mix of traders. So, okay, well, what's the pitch for the market? Basically, it's brought communities together. It's a social enterprise. We're just about covering our costs. We're not making any money on it. In the future, we might be able to make a bit, but it's near enough covering its costs. It brings different groups together. As I said, different communities, but also charities use it. We have stores for young people who do youth enterprise. We've got the local authorities involved, and there's an issue about that which we can talk about later. They provide us with the square, and we basically run the market. And it has given a number of people the opportunity to try out setting up in business, to decide if they did want to do it or didn't want to do it. Some businesses have started at a store and they've gone on and opened up small shops. Some started at a store and are now running 3 days a week as a business. And the food ones, for example, the Alu Tiki man, Mr. Singh, he does a lot of catering at weekends for sort of school events or weddings and stuff. So it's quite a good business for him. Juma Jewelry's got a good business and they do stuff online. So all in all, it's quite a tough project to run for all sorts of reasons, but Action Acton board and our staff are all 100% behind it, because we can see the community benefits, the life it brings back into Acton, and also a very public and visual demonstration of what Action Acton's about. People can see it, they can decide if it's something that they want to use, they can make their comments, and the traders are great. Most of them are local, 70% are local, and I think they bring their sort of local commitment with them, and of course all the money recycles in the local community. So I'll stop there.
That's great. Thanks very much, John. I've got a few questions. Other people have got some questions as well. So as usual, could we have hands up? And John will answer our questions. And I think Vanessa, who's having a bit of trouble with her mic, will perhaps be able to help us by typing into the chat box. So just to start off, I'm going to jump in and say, on a kind of practical note, on your balanced scorecard, John, now, soon and later, what's your time frame for soon and for later?
Well, soon, at the moment, there's been a bit of a change since the balanced scorecard was done, but the main change, which I think is of interest to people, is that the local authority, or rather one director within the local authority, thinks the market could be a bit like Borough Market in London, which is like a massive market, you know, fantastic, near the city, lots of money floating around. People go there as a tourist destination, and they put forward a proposal that they put the market out to tender, so private sector companies could come in and maybe run a series of market across the borough. That's not gone down at all well with us or with the local people or the traders, so we've had meetings with the leader of the council and the local councillors, and that's been at the moment sort of put on hold. But it's an issue to bear in mind, I suppose, with any similar sort of social enterprise, because with the local authorities and all the cuts that are being made, some are going to be looking to see if they can generate income, and in this case we don't think they would generate much income anyway. But in terms of the soon is to basically to fight off this proposal to put it out to tender, and to engage the market traders more. We're looking at ways we can sort of involve them more in planning and organising the market. That's a soon. We are always looking to increase the numbers of stalls, and on a soon basis we're doing a lot more marketing. We're going to be promoting it. We've had 2 videos made for YouTube. We're going to be doing a lot more sort of leafleting and banners, etc. And our objective, I think, in 2 years' time would be to increase the number of stores probably by about 20%, and to bring in more food stores, and also more, in a way, upmarket stores, to try and keep that balance between the number of people in Acton who've got money and the people who are on low income. Another future one is that we've just started up a food co-op a few months ago down on South Acton Estate, which is the estate where there's very little shops. And from a healthy living and links with the community point of view, we've just taken on someone 1 day a week to develop that food co-op, and that will link in with the market. Plus we've got Big Lottery grant outstanding to work on, and we're looking at other sort of funding options.
Thanks. Over to you, Sarah. And Jez, I think you had your hand up earlier, but I don't know if perhaps John has answered your question already.
Hi, John. I just wondered, when you're sort of choosing, or when you're working with the traders, how do you decide what kind of products or services, like produce, that they're selling? I.e., would you have 2 people selling jewellery in that market? And if not, if you only have sort of allocated 1 person per sort of product type, how do you decide? Is it something that the group in itself are making these decisions, or is it sort of your organisation that's sort of deciding these kind of things?
Hi, yeah, really good question, because it comes up all the time. What I'm going to try and do is, hopefully if Vanessa's mic's working okay, is get Vanessa to come back, because I mean, I know what our policy is and how we operate it, but she actually puts it into practice, so she has to deal with the traders and you know, talk to them when there's issues around, oh, we don't want someone else selling jewellery. So I'm hoping that Vanessa's going to be able to answer this. If not, I'll come back and answer it. So over to you, Vanessa.
you know, I think Vanessa's having trouble with her mic, so she might be able to sort of type into the chat box a little bit, which is will make us short and sweet and concise. So I hope if she's a tweeter, she's used to summing things up in a short amount of space. But otherwise, I think we might need to rely on you a bit more, John.
Okay, Vanessa, do you want to try and type some stuff in, and otherwise I'll come back and speak.
And perhaps if there are some other questions at the same time, we can be dealing with those.
Okay, well look, let me say a bit about the who decides what's in we're going to provide in the market. We had a lot of discussion around the types of stores. We started off, there was an argument we needed lots of arts and crafts stores, etc. And what we found was, and you know, we had sort of farmers market, we had London farmers market. Eventually, they were never able to provide the amount of stores they said they would provide in the first place, and eventually after about 18 months they decided to pull out, partly because they got an established farmers market in West Ealing, but also because there wasn't enough money coming in to keep enough of the traders going. So it was a bit similar with us. We brought in various sort of upper type of stores, but there wasn't enough money floating around. Most 70% of the people who use the market, people on fairly sort of low or modest incomes. So we have to deal with things like, well, how many food stores can we have, and we've decided to limit that to around about 2 hot ones, which we've got Afro-Caribbean and Indian, and we will go for a third one sometimes, sort of Polish food, and it might be on different days. Jewellery is a big issue because there's a lot of people who want to run jewellery stores, so we actually have 2 jewellery stores selling different types of jewellery, and then occasionally we might let another one in depending on the day, because the jewellery traders don't work every day. And that applies to, we basically look to see where the gaps are and then try and recruit stores for that. And what we have to do is negotiate, and it's usually with the individual store holders, about whether or not another store selling anything that's similar would be able to start up, and we leave a lot of that to the discretion of Vanessa, the supervisor, and if there's any big issues that come up, Vanessa would discuss it with us and the manager who oversees the market. But it is a current issue you need to deal with. One of the things we might be looking at a bit more is the general sort of market traders view. Although, of course, quite understandably, a lot of market traders, you know, their main interest is the self-interest. Although they do want to help the market as a whole, so you know they're pretty good by and large. But at the end of the day, you know, they do need to earn a living, so they're going to be looking particularly at their interest. We do have market representatives from the traders, and we do have meetings with the traders. We had one recently to do with the proposal to put the market out to tender, which is a very, very good meeting, which councillors attended.
John, I just wanted to ask what the donut factory was. I was intrigued. What's the donut factory?
Hi, yeah, the donut factory is used to be a bakery. It doesn't make donuts anymore, unfortunately, but it's been converted into a business startup centre. It's on 2 floors in a little mews just off one of the main roads, and the objective of it is to help people start up in business, and also actually to generate an income for Acton, which goes back into the social enterprise and back into the charity. So what we do with the donut factory is we rent out desk, broadband, heating, lighting, business rates included, everything included, so someone can walk in and basically set up in business within a day. I mean, we do take up references, and there's a month's deposit, but basically it's on a week's notice after that, so if it's not working out, they can leave after a week. Should there be any major problems, we could give them a week's notice. That's only happened once in the last sort of 18 months. Very, very competitive market at the moment. EasyJet have set up Easy Office, and they've got a couple fairly near us, you know, where they're renting stuff up at Basic. But we're doing reasonably well there, and the aim of it is, as I said, to help people set up in business, but it's got to make a surplus to plough back into the charity. And again, we're getting there, but we'll probably need about another sort of 8 months, I think, before it starts showing a good surplus. It's beginning to cover its costs and make a little surplus.
Vanessa, great. Would you like to try your mic again, and then I'll ask my questions. Let's hope you're working this time.
So the microphone button is in the bottom left of the screen, Vanessa. It's got a picture of a microphone. It might say Control and F2, or it might say Mic. Press that, and you'll know if you've pressed it because the microphone button next to your name in the participants window will go yellow. So over to you.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hello?
Hooray, I can hear you.
Do jump in, Vanessa. Do pick up the mic, and if there's a few things you want to say about the market, now's the time to do it.
Hi everybody. Well, it's been a long road to get to talk to you now. Yeah, the market's really snowy and really cold at the moment. And we're just trying to keep our spirits up. It's unfortunate a lot of people don't turn up when it's weather's like this, and that's the main problem that we have at the moment. If it's raining or wet or really cold, a lot of traders tend not to come out, which is really unfortunate because then the momentum of the market loses its momentum, and you know the people that do turn out get annoyed because obviously there's not as good a show as there normally is. But we've got a good core bunch at the moment, and they're keeping their spirits up today in these tough conditions.
Can I ask a couple of questions to both John and Vanessa? Vanessa, great that you managed to find your voice. Two specific ones. John, or some of you in the film, some of your stallholders mentioned the training that you provide and how useful it is. So that's one thing I'd like to hear a bit more about. The second one is, could you just break out a bit, you know what I'm going to say, being me, some of the figures. I was trying to do the maths, sort of £25 per stall for a double stall, 25 stalls on a Saturday. I'm guessing that you're pulling in about 1,500 a week or something like that, and perhaps operating, I don't know, 45 weeks a year or something, so maybe pulling in 60 grand gross or something like that. What are the costs involved? I understand, of course, Vanessa's employed as supervisor. You talked about setup costs every week. Do you pay a rent to the council? What are the other costs? So if you could just split out some of the costs around the market and say more about the training, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, Hugh, yeah, just in terms of costs, you're near enough dead right. I mean, we gross about 60,000 a year. On a Saturday, we probably take about 450, maybe 500. On a Thursday, we'd be lucky to take 200, probably 225. So we are looking at Thursdays because we don't make much. Well, we lose money on a Thursday. So one of the issues is, do we then immediately cut that out? But then we have a number of traders who need the third day, and they keep saying we need the third day. So from a financial point of view, one of the things we've been looking at, and we need to you know, come to some sort of definite decision on next year, is if we're going to carry on with Thursday, should we be saying, okay, well, those traders who want to trade on Thursdays, they put their own stores up? Because our major cost, apart from Vanessa's salary as a supervisor, and she does 27 hours a week, and some of that is other acting stuff, but I mean, that's obviously the salary is the main cost, and then the cost of putting the stores up and taking them down is a big cost, which any other project thinking of setting up the market needs to bear in mind could possibly reduce if they had a different arrangement. So our setup cost for the stores, it actually works out about 26,000 a year. And what we do is we pay a local company to put the stores up and take them down. Now, we've thought several times about, you know, us doing that and sort of employing people to do that. And that's something that we'll probably have to do next year, I should imagine. But the key thing is that the existing people who put the stores up and take them down, they're incredibly reliable. And if anyone's, I'm sure up in the north, but if even down here in Acton, if you're there at sort of 5:30 in the morning, it's freezing cold, it's snowing, it's slippery, and there's a gale blowing, but you've got to get out of bed and put those stores up, and then you've got to take them back later in the day. That, you know, a lot of people decide, then, oh, I don't want to do that, but these people are very, very reliable. But the major cost is the market supervisor and the store setup, and then you've got things like insurance, sort of marketing, publicity. We don't actually pay the council any rent for the use of this space, and if we did, then I think that would cause us problems in terms of you know, making sure we cover our costs and making a small surplus. So that's, I mean, I can tell you more about the finances. Vanessa can tell you about the market training scheme, which we ran in the past when we had funding to run it. At the moment, we're not running it. We did do one recently, about sort of 4 months ago, with support from the Hardship Fund. And we're looking at how we could try and run a few more later in the year. But I'll pass over to Vanessa and also see if there's any more questions.
Thanks, John. Basically, the market training scheme that we run is done by a very, very capable lady called Glenda, and we offer it in 2 stages. The first step to marketing, which is a 4-day workshop, which involves sort of introducing you to the markets, about how to run a store, identify what products would be more suitable to where you're selling, or whether it's suitable to you, how to do your market research. So just that, all the basic groundwork that you need to do if you're thinking about starting to run a market store. Then there's 4 more further modules, which are half days, which involve managing money, promoting your sales, selling to the customer, and then the final module is expanding your business, which gives you the tools to expand your business by increasing your sales or pitch, recognising the importance of expansion and stuff like that, and how to take your business a step further. And everybody who's taken part in the training has said it's brilliant. Even people who've got experience on working on market stalls have found it really, really educational, and they've learned something, and they've taken away from the training and used it on their pitch. And so, you know, if everyone's looking at setting up a social enterprise in the market model, then it was definitely worth having a scheme like this, because it gives the traders the confidence to go out there and actually put their thoughts into practice. If there's any questions about it, please feel free to ask me.
A topical question, I suppose, about the training is that, perhaps I misunderstood, but I don't know if they have to pay back the cost of it at any time, in money or time.
The only ask that we have, it's a free training. What we ask them to do is to secure their place, is to put a deposit down, because you obviously, if you can only have so many people on any course at any time, and if people say they're going to come and they don't turn up, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit of a letdown for everyone involved. So, you know, generally we just ask them to pay a deposit, and then they get it back at the end of the course.
Just to say, that is something we've looked at. What we're trying to do is boost up the numbers of stores at the market, so that's why we say give us a deposit, and then as long as you're going to trade at Acton Market, there won't be a charge. We've looked at charging people. It's quite difficult in the sense that there would be some people who financially would have no problem sort of paying for the course. Pardon? Sorry, no problem paying for the course. But again, you know, we are trying to target a lot of people from the local area, from the estate, etc., who are on very low incomes. So if we can provide it free, we'd like to. We're looking at trying to do something with the local FE college or the local university, who we've got good links with, to see if we could get some funding that way, and try and have a mix of paid for training and free training. That's our ideal.
Sorry, Paul, I can see you're waiting. Can I just jump in while I'm pursuing this sort of finance angle? couple of questions I put in the chat box. I wonder if you took on the setup yourselves, whether the company actually owns the stalls, and so that would there be capital costs, and who cleans up afterwards, I suppose. Is that a cost to the council or to somebody? And finally, have you looked at a microfinance offer for people setting up in business? Do they have cash flow issues? Is that something that could be linked to the training? Just wondered if those ideas have been explored.
Basically, in terms of the stores, yeah, there is a capital cost, and that can't be underestimated. We had, some funding that we applied for as part of a regeneration bid from London Development Agency, which was fantastic because it meant that not only could we buy stores, but it gave us sort of leverage to, run the market to get it going. It was in a stage where it can be run to cover its costs or maybe make a small surplus. The actual market store side of things, we eventually had to buy stores that screwed into the ground with special fittings because of the wind problem we had, particularly in the winter. The initial ordinary market stores that are used were getting blown over, and all the stock was getting ruined, and there was health and safety issues. I mean, that's a particular problem with our weather situation in the square. Although, most of the time you can have ordinary stores, but I mean, there is a sort of cost of buying the stalls. In terms of cleaning up afterwards, all the traders are supposed to either take their own rubbish away, or Vanessa provides them on payment with one of the council refuse sacks. And in terms of microfinance, we haven't actually sort of developed that, and that's an area that I think is something that's a good suggestion we'd like to look at, because we do get young entrepreneurs who want to start up. We get people with very little money to buy stock who want to start up, and I think the idea of introducing them to micro loans or some sort of similar situation is something we'll definitely explore.
Any other questions for John? Paul and Vanessa, you've got your hands up. I'm hoping Vanessa's there to answer a question. Paul, over to you.
I'm pitching for our market next week, actually. I've discovered a nice little pot of capital funding in Bradford. And one of the things obviously every fund comes with conditions. And one of the things I'm interested about yours is the profile of the people who are coming to set up stalls. How many of them are already employed? Is it a sideline occupation? Are they new businesses and so on? I don't know if you have a typical stall holder, but it'd be good to hear that kind of information.
Do you want to answer that, Vanessa, and then I'll come back?
Think of something to answer the question. Our market, as it is at the moment, Thursday there's completely set of traders on each individual day, because some of the traders do different markets on different days. But generally, because of where the market is situated, it has to be something that appeals to the demographic of the visitor. And of course, on a Thursday and a Friday, you have people going to and from work, catching the bus. So there's a different sort of set of customers. And then on a Saturday, we have a really small farmers market, and we have a bit more arts and crafts sort of stuff. And some of those ladies who do the arts and crafts stuff do work during the week, and it's sort of like a little bit of a hobby. So we do have traders that are with us all 3 days, and then we have some traders who just trade on a Thursday, who just trade on a Friday, or just trade on a Saturday, just to suit the demographic of the changing demographic of the area on the days that the market's on.
Just to add to that, one of the things I think is really good about the market, it gives older people a chance to basically to continue to work. We've got a number of stall holders over 60 who feel really positive about the market, because it gives them a sort of little business to run, and so it's good in that respect, providing opportunities for people. I think the younger people find it more difficult because of access to sort of funding, and also I think they're mainly looking to be employed. We've got, as we said, we've got some unemployed people who are then taking this up, and then you've got people like people from the local charities, and I mean that's a really good mix to add in on the community side, because, for example, we got the local autistic society. They run their store with volunteers. They have young autistic people and autistic adults who sell things that they've made at the store. And one of the big things is the interaction between the autistic young people and adults and the community and the volunteers. And the volunteers say lots of people come up and ask them questions, etc. Now we do that with a number of different charities. We've got the Blue Cross Animal Charity, which is amazing because of the people who run it. They're real characters, but they're raising about £200 a week through their store. But also they get a lot of clothing and goods donated to them, and they sell it really cheap, which is fantastic for the local community as well, because they're able to buy things that they need at a very sort of low price.
Well, just to add to what John was saying as well, MenCap also have a market on Everest Market store on a Thursday, and Ealing Pastoral Care Team, primary care team, also have a store promoting any health incentives. So, for instance, we had oral care today for under 12, so they were giving out toothbrushes and showing people with children how to brush their teeth properly. And the market is a good base for people to promote whatever it is that they do or what's going on in a local area, which is beneficial to everybody.
Sorry, I'm full of questions today. Vanessa, could you tell us what makes a good market supervisor, and so a bit about yourself really, and do you benchmark against other markets? Is there a network of market supervisors? John talked about Borough Market, which I know. You know, how do you benchmark your performance, I guess, both in sort of personal terms and the market as a whole?
Oh, you have to have broad shoulders, a thick skin, and a really warm coat at the moment. I've spoken to other traders who attend other markets, and they said that I'm quite nice, so that's a plus. There isn't a network of market supervisors that we all get together and stuff like that. I couldn't say. I just sort of, as long as your traders are happy and everyone's got everything that they need, generally that makes a good market. You know, you just try and be as fair to the trader, and listen. If they've got an issue, you need to listen to them and sort of try and sort it out for them. Sometimes they can be notoriously hard to work with, some traders, because they like things their own way. But there's no sort of network or any rules that you have to think. I think you just have to be fair at the end of the day.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, basically, as Vanessa said, you've got to be pretty tough, and you've got to have a thick skin, because you'll be torn in lots of different directions from the traders. There's always going to be something going on and bubbling around. So it's important to be able to respond positively. As Vanessa said, I think one of the really important things is to be seen to be fair, because even if people don't like what the decision is, as long as you're seen to be fair, that is important. Just to mention a couple of things, one of our rules is that we don't allow any sales or people standard in the market promoting any religion or politics, because with a market you obviously attract people who do that, and we've had to speak to them and basically say that, you know, they're not allowed to do that. And it's been difficult to deal with that, but to be honest, it's not been a major issue, but it has come up several times. Just to mention that, as because, you know, as soon as you attract lots of people are going to come and try and promote whatever cause it is they want to promote. So politics and religion are generally out. In terms of networking, just to mention, there's a lot of things going on with markets. We are actually involved in discussions with London and national groups who doing like they've recently done a good practice guide to the market, looking across the country, etc. There's a recent report been done on, which I can give people references to, for London Development Agency on London markets, which is really interesting. And one of the issues is those councils who officially are running markets and got market supervisors, team, etc., who charge people for stalls and pitches, they're looking at whether that is a financially viable model, and some of them are looking at passing them over to trusts or to the private sector. And there are meetings. It's just again, time pressures. Vanessa being part-time, sometimes it's difficult to get to a meeting on a market day, that type of thing. But it's something that we're looking at developing. And we did have someone down from Urban Space, their chief exec, it was about 15 months ago, to give us an assessment of the market. And because they're involved in Greenwich market, quite a big one, they run that, and they've done quite a lot of stuff like that. And they were very positive, which was encouraging, because they said, we'd started the market up from scratch, which is really, really difficult these days. And they were very impressed by the fact that a lot of the traders were local traders. And we're also involved in, there is a sort of London market sort of meeting at City Hall every now and again. So we do have some networks which we probably try and build on. We are approached by other people who say, can we meet to talk about your model, your community market model, etc., or we're setting up a trust. Brixton Market approached us, a couple of others have. So and I know the DTA are obviously involved in this. Steve is involved in looking at markets, and obviously Vicky, I think it is, from the north, looking at developing markets. It's actually an area that we could be doing more networking and learning from each other about. So we're up for that, definitely.
Great, thanks, John. I find the Acton market example really inspiring, and I know that my colleagues, broadly, they've been colleagues mainly based up in Cumbria and Northumberland, who've been looking at development trusts taking on markets or establishing new markets, and have done quite a lot of research into this. I think we can make the research paper publicly available. Paul, we should get it to you somehow. There does seem to be some sort of fairly big private sector operators who run a number of markets, and as I say, they do tend to be closely guarded by local authorities as a source of income. Just as an example, I went up to Cumbria, to the Eden Valley, which is one of the known vanguard communities for the big society. And as part of my preparation to do that, I had a close look at the figures for Eden District Council, and as far as I could see, they only made money out of three things. Everything else was a net cost to them. The three things they made money out of was parking. They made a tiny bit of money out of their managed workspace, and they made a little bit of money out of markets. So this does represent, I guess, core flexible income for cash-strapped local authorities. That's genuine earned income that central government or other people can't take away from them, if you like, and therefore, as we all know about flexible income that you can then use the proceeds to plug gaps in your organization or develop other areas, is really important. So it does seem to me that there is quite a lot of background to learn on this. Just while I've got the mic, maybe if I just have a bit of general reflection on this as a case study, it does seem to me that here is a wonderful example of what I would call self-generated business by a trust. So instead of looking for contracts to deliver specific things, and clearly, Acton is much bigger than just its market. This is the kind of event that they have self-generated, and can be a very important tool. I was going to link it to, I think, of North Smethwick Development Trust, who happen to be close to the Villa ground, who run a good business on home day matches by using their parking lot as a match day car park. Here in Bradford, Manningham Mills Community Association, that I'm linked to, that is a small managed workspace catering with a small hall, is beginning to develop a number of events. So instead of complaining about the hall not being booked enough, the staff team generate events, including, particularly given our population, some really quite successful Eid bazaars that tend to take place just before the two Eid festivals, are targeted at the local community. It's an indoor space, and so markets, clearly there are challenges around holding outdoor markets, but if you own a space, can you do indoor markets? I guess this is going back to some extent to the sort of Jam and Jerusalem roots in many ways of part of the voluntary sector. The other thing, and I don't know if Jess is still with us, but it does seem to me to link to a lot of her thinking about meanwhile use. And I was particularly struck as John was talking about the way that this allowed people to try out business ideas, and the way that their stalls became a shop window for, in the case of the Sikh guy whose nickname I've forgotten, Mr. Alu Tikka, was he called? It's a shop window for his catering business, or can be a shop window for online stuff, and also providing a very public window for Acton itself. So in tough times, are there meanwhile uses, and I'd ask Jess to say a bit more about the Meanwhile project, that we can develop in order to self-generate at a time when clearly longer term things aren't necessarily available. Jess, would you like to say something? Oh, well, I see John and Vanessa want to reply to that. So let's hear from them first, and then Jess, maybe you develop the Meanwhile ideas a bit further.
Vanessa?
Vanessa?
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now? I was just going to what you said about the Eid markets. It's often easy to grab someone's attention or a customer's attention or a trader's attention if you have a pop-up market with a theme, and therefore you grab public's notice and an interest in what you're doing. It's much harder to sustain a level or a number of traders over a long period of time through hail, wind and snow, and then keeping it exciting for customers, etc. Because quite often I just get a bit bored, so I've always said to traders, try and keep your display, just try and move it around every now and then so it doesn't look like you're just selling the same stuff and you're displaying it the same way every single week, because if you change it around or something's different, then often it'll grab someone's attention. That's all I've got to say really about that.
Okay, yeah, if I just add a couple of things. On the market side of things, there's plenty of scope to try a few things out. I mean, obviously you do need the capital and you need someone for the stores, you need someone to put them, but there's another estate in West Ealing, which again has got very few facilities on, and it's a community organisation, a good one working there, and they're going to be running a market one day a week in a car park, you know, of a pub that, well, actually the pub got demolished because of all sorts of reasons. But I mean, it's empty there, so they're going to run a market there. I think the indoor thing is really important. We have negotiated different sort of empty properties with the local authority to get them at a peppercorn rent, etc. And we're really pleased to say that, in fact, we've had some assistance from Meanwhile Space for our latest one, which is there's been a sort of like a double shop. It used to be a supermarket, small supermarket, and a sub post office on South Acton Estate. It's been empty, boarded up because the estate's been redeveloped. So it's been boarded up for about 3 years now. And with the help of Meanwhile Space, we've now negotiated peppercorn rent from the council. We've put some capital into refurbishing it. We've got the local community involved, and particularly the help from Jess's team has been great. And we're aiming to use that, and we're probably going to, in the winter, have the food co-op based there, you know, which will be helpful. And then we're going to have it for like information, advice, and training and stuff for, you know, young people. So I think the Meanwhile Space is a great idea.
Jess, I've taken the microphone away from you. I don't know if you noticed we can't hear you at all. That's a real shame. Do you want to just run through the audio setup wizard, and I'll talk very briefly about Meanwhile Space while you're doing that. So, Meanwhile Space is a project we've been running through the DTA, and it aims to help community groups use and utilise, at the very beginning, shop property, but we're branching out into land as well. Use properties which have been shut down, perhaps by the recession or perhaps which are closed down anyway, and to use them, what we're calling, in the meanwhile, temporarily. And we've been developing some legal documents to help people take on a lease, a meanwhile lease, so that they don't need to pay rent for the shop, but can use it almost as it were free until a buyer or user comes along, so that the owner of the property or the land isn't disadvantaged in any way. In fact, it's a huge advantage to have the shop open, keeping the high street vibrant, not being another shop that's either boarded up or as opened as a sort of charity and £1 shop. Jess, do you want to try again with your microphone? Try again, Jess.
Think she must be logging in and logging out. We've got the link to Meanwhile Space. Thanks, Rachel. Just to add a little bit, the financial angle of empty property is around the fact that in the property boom, government started collecting rates or reducing the holiday period that you were allowed on your rates for empty property. They brought it in just as the property crash hit, but it is still in place, and clearly charities have rate relief, and therefore taking properties off the hands of rate payers, property owners, allows them to claim the rate relief, and therefore there's an economic angle, a financial angle of advantage. And that includes local authorities who perversely, because of the way the rating system works, also have to pay rates on buildings that they own. So there is a real advantage to property owners in shifting, even in meanwhile, or for the meanwhile, spaces into charitable management. And that's one of the levers that Jess and her team at Meanwhile Space have been exploiting to liberate property and bring it into productive use. The other concept that I know Jess would develop, were she able to speak for herself, is the whole time value of social capital, and the depressing effect of empty property just being left and unemployed people with nothing to do. And so it's trying to marry those two wastages, if you like, if you remember my concept of the cost of doing nothing, together to do something creative at a time when perhaps wider economic, either public sector cuts or general economic downturn is saying that nothing can work. Here's a creative option to try and do something being better than nothing. There are also issues around security, around maintaining the value. We didn't talk about the whole retail clustering, but if you're in a parade of shops and 6 of them are empty, that's clearly not good for you. So generally it is trying to get a groundswell of interest around meanwhile use for this, and there are some fabulous examples on the meanwhile space. There's a whole very active electronic network around meanwhile, and a whole host of practitioners. I'll shut up now and maybe see if Jess is back online.
Looks like she's still having a little bit of trouble, which is a shame. John and Paul, you've got your hands up. Did you have a question around meanwhile?
Meanwhile, actually, it was going back to some previous points.
That's fine. Ask away.
Okay, well, it's more comments really, I guess. One of the things is around these the idea of pop-up markets. We're planning to do a fairly regular market, but we have had requests for specific theme markets, and this I think we see is quite an important way of, as was said by John, of attracting interest into the market. And we've had some really fascinating ideas. In fact, the one that's gone down the best with local public sector workers, and I think it says something about their youth, is a goth market, which I just can't wait to see that happen. But there's a whole range, obviously Christmas markets and Eid markets and so on. But it's the goth market I'm really looking forward to. And also tying it in with other things we do. Last year we had our first annual Shipley Cake Festival, which was quite a spectacular event of some very strange creations. And we want to tie in our market with the Cake Festival, so there's a kind of commercial side to that to make the Cake Festival really pay for itself. And on the social capital side, when we when we worked on our market plan originally, we kind of had 3 legs to the idea of sole traders, community enterprise, and then a youth challenge. But what we found is, as we've talked more and more about the market to other people, is they continually want to plug things into it. And now, rather than being 3-legged, it's like an octopus. There's so many different ideas spinning around the market. And one which I thought might be handy for John or anyone else who's got a market and trying to really cross-subsidise with some grant funding is we put in a bid, which I think will almost certainly fail, but we put in a bid to Nesta for their social capital fund around using the whole metaphor of market stalls to develop social capital, and the idea of someone really setting their stall out for their idea and going through training really quite similar to this around developing their idea, pitching their idea, researching, and so on, that they would be developing their social capital and right alongside sole traders developing their financial capital, if you like, and pitching their idea in the market live with other traders. So there's all sorts of things we found we can bolt onto a market idea.
Oh, that sounds great, Paul. I mean, a lot of really interesting things there. Although, to be honest, I've never heard of anyone putting forward a proposal for a goth market, but maybe it's different where you are. But I'm sure if I mention it to some people, we'd be able to get one going. Just mention a couple of bits from our experience. Before we started the market, we ran a few sort of theme-type markets. We ran an African market as an organisation in London that goes around and puts on African markets. We've also had French markets, and you know, they'll pay to come and set things up. But it obviously depends where it's located because they need to make money. But we have had French markets, and I know locally there's been like a German and a Belgian market. So that's about approaching those sort of organisations and seeing if they want to come to your area and then negotiating a price for them to come and set the market up. But it does generate interest in what's possible. And in terms of community events and markets, I think that's pretty good. I mean, one of the things we probably want to try and develop more is to link in with different community organisations and ask them if they want to organise or have a big role in the market on one of their might be cultural days or faith days or whatever. So we link as we've got very diverse communities in Acton. So that's another way of bringing in more of a theme, etc. And we also look out for what's going on, like a couple of weeks ago it was National Apple Week or whatever. There was a National Cauliflower Day, and we have food at the market, cauliflower curry and etc. So I think all the time it's about looking to see what sort of things are out there which will help create interest in a market. And it's good to hear if you say lots of people are getting interested and saying, oh, why can't we do this and why can't we do that? Because I suppose our sort of experience is it's worth trying a range of different things. And we, for example, with the Blue Cross, which was a charity run by very sort of committed people in quite characters, as I said, no. You might say, well, I'm not selling anything particularly expensive, it's all sort of like low-cost stuff, but it attracts lots of people to the store, and lots of people come to see the people, they're interested in animals, but also they come because they can buy things at a bargain price. And that adds to other stores, which are maybe more slightly upmarket, like sort of the jewellery stores, etc. And good luck with your Nesta application. We've done one as well in down for South Acton Estate and Acton Central, trying to bring the communities together around the issue of unemployment. So be fantastic if we both got through on it. Anyway, good luck, Paul.
Thanks, John. I don't know if anyone else has got any more questions for John. I know Vanessa's had to leave us, I think. We don't have a participant pitch for the second half of the session. Julie, who would have been doing it, hasn't been able to join us today. Paul, if it's not putting you on the spot too much, I wondered if you might like to practice the pitch you're going to make to the council around the market on us after the break. I appreciate that you've not necessarily prepared anything particularly for us, but perhaps we could give you a few pointers, and it might be a useful run-through. I'd rather put you on the spot, but what would you think about that?
Go, yeah. I'm at home. I've got very little information with me, but certainly it's something I talk about far too much. So it might be a case of you stopping me, I think, more than getting me going.
Oh, well, that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Paul. I think that, as we've said in the past, and as we'll go over on the meetup day in Wolverhampton, where we talk a lot more about pitching, to be concise, to be precise, and to do sort of really 5 minutes is the key. I think I'm sure we can all of us talk for an awful long time about our projects, but if you can get over the key issues in a few minutes, that I think makes for a much more successful pitch. Well, I'm going to shall we say we'll have a break and maybe even give Paul a chance to pull a few thoughts together. Perhaps meet back here at 3:30.
Okay, by me.
That's great, John. I hope you'll be able to join us for it'll be about half an hour. It'll probably be from about 3:30 till about 4, and perhaps we'll finish ever so slightly earlier today. So see everyone back here at 3:30. Welcome back, everyone, after the break. If you're here, could you press the tick button just to let us know, as some of us have, that you're back? And when we're more or less all here, I think we'll start.
Hi, just to say I'm back, John. I've done the tick.
That's great. Thanks very much, John. I think we're all here apart from Hugh, Sarah's had to head back into the office, and I think Vanessa has left already. So I think that just before we start, Jess has said that she thinks she's got her audio working now, and she just wants to say a little something about Rathbone Market in Newham, and then Paul will get started with your pitch once Hugh has joined us. So over to you, Jess. Very sorry, Jess. Still no sound from your end. It's like I'm going to have to send you a super new headset as well. Don't know what to say. Sorry that you're not able to participate with us this session. Maybe you want to type something into the chat box. Otherwise, oh no, Jess says she already has a new headset. Must be snow on the lines. That's the only thing I can think of. Well, I think just we're all here apart from Hugh, so maybe Paul, do you want to make a start and give us your pitch around the Shipley alternative market?
Vicky, and funnily enough, I just got an email in the break saying my pitch to Bradford Kickstart is on Tuesday afternoon, so now I know this is really a proper rehearsal. I thought I'd start by just describing Shipley. It's probably not a town in many people's kind of imagination. It's on the north of Bradford, and it's what I describe as a classic donut town. It's all the goodnesses around the edges, and the middle has really had the, well, how shall I say it politely, it's had the stuffing knocked out of it. It was redeveloped in the 60s. We've got a ring of Victorian housing terraces and more affluent houses, and in the middle there's a big chunk of low-rise flats and a 60s town centre, really out of character with the surrounding area. So as such, because it's now quite a blighted town centre, it's got very low footfall. It's predominantly attracting only the very low-income families into it, and it's now one of the maybe less popular sides of meanwhile uses is it's blighted by charity shops. Which isn't necessarily their fault, but it's got the highest concentration of charity shops in Bradford district. It's got two markets already. Both I would describe as struggling. In fact, one of them I'd say is failing. So there's an outdoor market run by the council. It's predominantly selling bric-a-brac, and it's not doing very well at all. High level of voids on these stalls. And then there's an indoor market which is privately owned, and again that is sliding slowly but surely. It's about half empty now. We initially looked at getting directly involved in those markets, and there was a number of reasons why we didn't want to. One is particularly the outdoor market. One is because the council are slightly too controlling, and also because some of the stall holders that are left are people we actually found we just couldn't work with. They were very, very difficult people to deal with. So we decided to, in a sense, set up a third market in Shipley to really prove that we could, as a development trust and as a community enterprise, come up with something quite different in an embryonic form, and then go to talk to these other two markets, really with something very concrete to offer. And what we came up with after talking to our local community was Shipley Alternative Market, and this came about because people wanted something actually quite different to the existing markets. They wanted something which acted as a social hub, which offered something for young people. There's practically nothing in Shipley town centre for young people. Offered something for families, and combined really the quite lively cottage industry kind of artisan scene that's going on in Bradford with community enterprise and with something for young people. So we had to kind of come up with something new, and in actual fact we ended up coming up with something quite old and delved back into our own pasts. And I was involved in an alternative market in the 1980s, which was run as a cooperative by the stallholders, and it worked very, very well, and kind of dusted that idea off. Speaking to other people who'd also been involved in alternative markets in the 1980s, and also in the artisan type shops that were around in the 1980s and 1990s but had been squeezed off the high street. So we arrived at our idea of the Shipley Alternative Market and took that to Bradford Market Services and were knocked right back. And this is something Hugh mentioned earlier about the power, really, local authorities have around markets, and also power, very conservative attitudes, and defending a monopoly position. So we had to go away and refigure. And it's now known as the Shipley Alternative, a name that stuck simply because we were forced to take the word market out of it. So we have the Shipley Alternative. And the Shipley Alternative now has a number of different pillars, if you like, that prop it up. So we needed to move away quite rapidly from it being purely around sole traders, really to appease Bradford Market Services, and give it a very different character to existing markets. And the main pillars are, first and foremost for us, remains sole traders, but it's going to be largely people who are testing business ideas, who are, or probably most people we've spoken to are already in low-income work or at college or parenting, and this is a way of them entering trading. The second pillar is community trading, and we are a community centre that's filled up with community organisations who have all really over the last 15 years become very grant dependent, even using very small grants, and we now obviously need to move them off grant dependency very quickly and get them thinking creatively about trading. So we've talked to a lot of our community organisations around the idea of a market and to do proper serious trading, not selling necessarily selling bric-a-brac or ex-rental video cassettes, but thinking about how they could sell higher value products than that, which would complement the sole traders and add to the whole value of the market, but which also reflects their aims and mission. So good examples of that are there's a learning disabilities project that has a woodworking shop and they want to sell things they make. There's a Friends of the local woodland and they want to sell wildflowers for gardens. So it's proper trading, not just bric-a-brac. The third leg is Youth Challenge, and this has worked quite well in Bradford, where a group of young people are given a market stall, a small pot of money, and asked to make it grow for charity. So it's kind of the apprentice style thing, and that's been tested and worked successfully in Bradford markets. Unfortunately, that project is due to close in March, so we said we'd pick that up and bring it into our market. The fourth is a cafe, the dreaded community cafe. Really important for our market. Our market's an indoor market, and the cafe is really important because it increases what's called dwell time. So people come into the market, they wander around, they might buy something, they might not, but the cafe keeps them there. So they sit down, they have a cup of tea, meet people, chat, and it makes their trip go from 20 minutes to maybe a couple of hours, which is really important. And also it provides a business opportunity for someone and volunteering opportunities. And the final pillar, which I mentioned earlier, is the social capital side, and that's becoming increasingly important to us and to our local authority. Our local area office is building social capital really because the local authority know that the existing neighbourhood support services are going to collapse in the next couple of years. So they see social capital as being something really important that we build up. I won't dwell on that too much because I did try and explain it earlier. And what we've, in terms of our financial model, just to try and wrap this up, we've been very clear about what we consider sustainable in the market and what we consider unsustainable, and that's been really important to us. So we know that the social capital side initially is what we would term as unsustainable, and that's where we go for grant income, what little is left around. So we've been bashing bids into various trust funds, Nesta, the lottery and so on, to try and get grant subsidy into the social capital side. The sustainable side will be developed as on a cooperative model. It won't be a formal cooperative, but it will be developed on a kind of collective model of stallholders. Most of the ones we've spoken to that are potential stallholders are actually really looking forward to that, to getting actively involved in how the market develops, how it's promoted and publicised, and in vetting stalls, which we want to get them directly involved in, so it's kind of peer review. We have also as Acton have done, is want to develop market stall trading, and as I said, use that both for developing trading opportunities for sole traders, but also really carrying the concepts of that over into the social capital side and using very similar training, almost a mirror image, to support local people in developing, really selling their ideas, and their aim wouldn't be to attract money, but be to attract social capital, if you like, to attract support, to get people to enlist in and invest in their ideas with their time and so on. So it is a kind of very multifaceted thing. We see this. This is we from the outset of we're only 2 years old as a development trust, and from the outset we've always said we are playing a very long game in Shipley. It's going to be a town that's slow to change, and our market really will. We've got an eye on, as I've said at the beginning, an eye on our particular outdoor market, but we see that as being years down the road. This is really our laboratory, if you like, our alternative market. I'll stop there because I think I've probably hit 5 minutes, and let if anyone else wants to ask any questions.
Paul, great, well done, mate. Particularly as we, gave you 2 seconds to prepare. Obviously, I live about 3/4 of a mile from Shipley, and know both Paul, the project, and the idea. Therefore, with sort of first-hand reference to it. One thing, of course, that we haven't, and we didn't press John on really either, but of course, location. Footfall, I love dwell time. We're picking up the jargon, pop up around this, and appropriate developments for having really understood the location. And so my first reaction to it, and I do have the advantage, of course, of knowing the location well, is I think that your analysis, Paul, of the location, its advantages and disadvantages and its opportunities is absolutely spot on. John blinked a little bit at the idea of a goth market, but I can see that working really well, and maybe goths is something that's disappeared from down south, but it still exists up here. And I think that's really interesting. I'll perhaps leave it to other people. Clearly, Paul, you were adapting your pitch to your audience, and we would expect you to pitch it slightly differently when you go to see the Kickstart people. Kickstart, we should explain, is a branch of LEGI funding, Local Enterprise Growth Initiative, that is around business startup, and is the basically it's the council-run leg of that. They've devolved some of it to various other organisations, including the Development Trust in Manningham. I'm linked to where we have tried to operate something called the Grid, which essentially is a hot desking hub for business startup, heavily grant dependent, interesting in terms of outputs, but not sustainable in terms of finance. So that's what that piece of jargon is. But other questions, comments?
Hi, can you hear me now? Or can you hear me now? Got some chicks. Oh, thank God for that. Right. Okay. Yeah, the point that Hugh just made about pitching, it really struck me while you were talking, Paul, just how important some of the difficult background is in describing how you come to a particular business approach. And I was thinking about, God, how do you explain this kind of background in a polite way, in a way that you can kind of afford to put out to a wider public, or to sometimes the specific people that have made it so challenging. And I think it's a real, I mean, I'm trying to save a peer, and a lot of the background of why we've come to the project we've come to is about the experience we've had with some difficult people and some difficult challenges. So just any thoughts on how you kind of skew the pitch effectively and describe some of that background without causing difficulties?
As you may know, I used to be, until very recently, I was a trainer, training groups on funding advice, and one of the things, pitching is obviously is the biggest single thing in funding advice, and the trick, I think, is to think about, well, what's their aim, and you pitch to their aim. And I learned very quickly. I've lived in Bradford for many years, but working within the depth now, we're now contacting very archaic, hidden, dusty old offices in the Bradford Council who things haven't changed in decades, and realising that coming up with a new idea is actually quite, they see it as confrontational, they see it as threatening, even though what they're trying, they're quick to admit once you get their trust a little bit, is failing. So one of the things I guess is to talk to their own aims. So with Kickstart, I'll be pitching their aim is business startup. Our project is probably business startup to some extent, but really, as you can see, there's a lot more to it than that. And also, we understand we're very small and we understand the limitations of our project, but we will be talking business startup, and we will not be talking social capital. That's almost certain, because they will run a mile. So I think it's being clear about, it's doing a little bit of digging around, isn't it, as we all probably know, and finding out what presses their buttons, and that's what we speak to, I guess.
Hi, I'd like to endorse what Paul's saying about looking at the local authority and seeing, well, what's in it for them? Why should they help you unless you're helping them? And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of saying that's the key thing to try and find out, because if it's possible to do a pitch which shows them how you're going to help them maybe achieve some objectives or targets, whether it's to do with big society or localism or business startup, I mean, that's a really key thing, because in terms of the local authority, I expect they, as you said, they're going to be sitting there. Some will be resentful. Some will think that you're saying that your organisation is much better than theirs in terms of organising the market. So I think you have to take those things on board. And what is in it for them is the key thing, really, I think, in terms of what support you want. And what support do you want? Is it that you need planning permission? Is it your building? Is it something where you don't need planning permission, but you just need the approval to run the market? And how much is it going to cost you? That's one of the things. It's a really good way of promoting your organisation and getting people on board and doing all the things you've said. And is that going to cost you money as an organisation to do that, or will you make a surplus after a year or whatever? I suppose the two things really is within the pitch is how can you highlight what's in it for them? So when you go and pitch to them, what are you going to say about, this could be beneficial to, the council or whatever? And just a separate question is the question about funding. What is the funding, and what's your sort of financial plans?
What's in it for them? It's an interesting story with Kickstart, really, because they are going to disappear in March, along with many other things, and they have this underspend of capital funding, which, as you can imagine, there are lots of people circling around that. And my initial pitch to them really was very unsuccessful, and is just actually to contradict myself slightly, because I was speaking too much about their game and not enough about what we were bringing to the party, if you like. So I contacted them, spoke to them, and then followed up with a letter, and then got a kind of Dear John. And actually, it's because they tried markets as a way of initiating business startups. And they were a complete failure. They ran 3 schemes, and they were a complete failure, which I was aware of, but should have really taken more into account. So what I was taking to them is that this is actually something quite different to that from they're doing, and the reason we're using market stalls is because they offer the person the ultimate flexibility, as you were describing in your market in Acton. People come for 1 day, 2 days, some people want 3 days. And the research we did with local people around running stalls was that they couldn't afford to take the financial risk of giving up time, which is what Kickstart were asking in their market projects, to give up everything and go and man a market stall, and not knowing whether it's going to succeed or fail. And as we know, even with the best of support, at least a third of businesses fail in the first couple of years, and actually around 50% of social enterprises, as far as I can see, fail after a couple of years once the subsidies are withdrawn. So our argument to them really wasn't about building a new market, but it was about getting people into enterprise, and that people would use our market as a test bed, but then may well go on to either joining the existing craft market circuit, farmers markets, shops, e-commerce, or going into buffer markets. But this was really a test bed for business rather than a market. Our aim isn't to have permanent market stallholders, it's to have a throughput of people developing business ideas. In terms of the money, the actual market itself, what we're asking for is, I don't have the figures in front of me, it's about 35,000 to cover our capital costs for setting up the market, and in particular the cafe, which I think they've accepted is kind of the anchor in the market and is going to hopefully bankroll, it's always hopefully, isn't it, bankroll the rest of the market. The pitches, you asked some questions earlier on, we are aiming for about 20 pitches, which will be a mixed economy of sole traders, community trading, and social capital stalls. And we can make ends meet by charging £5 a pitch. The building is owned by the council, but we are the occupiers, so we can. It's actually quite cheap for us to run the market in our own building. If we were to go outside, it would be a different matter altogether, I think. So hopefully that gives you an idea on the finances. All the support that we would like to offer will be dependent on other income streams. We don't want to pass the cost of that on to people trying to set up a business. So we are, as I said, bidding like mad. We also have a community development commission at the moment. So at the moment our plan is to use some of that with the social capital argument to justify using community development funding to subsidise our market, if you like, but it's really to run the training for people. Sorry, so putting up stalls, we're a community building, it's an old Victorian primary school. The putting up stalls is obviously far less of a problem for us than it is in Acton, where they're dealing with large cumbersome marquees kind of type stalls, bad weather, access problems. Ours is simple, an indoor market. It's fold-up tables, chairs, and power supplies to the stalls. So it's a much simpler logistical problem, which we will hopefully manage in-house.
Paul, I just want to return to what I think of as residual inertia in dealing with local authorities, and Jess referred to it as well. I think it is a generic problem. To some extent, there are no new ideas. We're always reinventing old ideas, it seems to me. But there is a sort of war weariness, particularly amongst middle-ranking officers in local authorities, you know, that they've been there, they've seen that, they've tried it, and you know, I think part of the tactic is to recognize that, and clearly, you know, I know you understand this, and I'm really just trying to make a more generic point. And it does seem to me sometimes that it's why I think there's a power in networks like the DTA. I certainly know that when I say things in Bradford, my card is marked. They know that I come from a community enterprise perspective, and they know, you know, over many years now, you know, basically where I'm coming from. And so to some extent you're being typecast. I go down the road to Sheffield and say exactly the same thing, and they treat me like some kind of guru. So the idea that you use external examples to bolster your case and to overcome what I call this residual inertia, I think is quite powerful. So, you know, I think it was timely, was it not, seeing the Acton example, and it does seem to me that you know, both links to benchmarking. You know, we've done our research and we've looked at what's working elsewhere. But you know, as well as that very important thing of, you know, correct analysis of your particular location and what's going to work, so demonstrating your local knowledge, then bringing external examples to bear seems to me quite powerful in terms of overcoming what I'm calling this residual inertia.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of inertia, definitely, I think, within local authorities, and a lot of resentment as well, and definitely certain officers are not really that bothered about whether a project benefits the community or not, quite frankly. They've got all sorts of other irons in the fire. I know that's being a bit scathing, but that is the case with some officers. So one of my questions that I've just typed in the box is, do you have, or could you do any background work? It's a bit late now, whatever, before Tuesday, but are there any sort of sympathetic officers in the council who would, you know, be supportive when you do your pitch, or any local councillors who could support you? Certainly that's an area that we get involved in, is, you know, trying to get people from the local authority, whether they're an officer or a councillor, on our side. I just wondered if that's possible or not.
There's all sorts of sides to that. One of the frustrating things, of course, is a lot of the good officers are leaving, or rather than leaving, they're being told to leave, and that you know, and they're leaving behind really a load of accountants, which is quite scary. But we do have supporters, and the interesting thing is, once we manage to sit down with people in the council, it doesn't take very long really to win people round. There's an initial hostility, and I think there's, at the moment particularly, we're finding, I'm sure it's the same everywhere, a high degree of defensiveness in local authorities, and I can completely understand why. They've never been more undermined ever, I think. So we know we're having to tread very carefully. I will be using Acton absolutely on Tuesday. I think the way you describe your market is exactly the way I describe ours, other than yours is running and ours isn't. So it's a brilliant example and a great benchmark as well of here it is, it works. The biggest problem for us is that there are two failing markets in Shipley, and it's obvious to everyone around why they're failing, except the council officers who are responsible for them. And it's very difficult to go to a local authority officer and say you're failing, and it's something we just can't do. So we have to find ways around saying that, as Jess was alluding to earlier. And to kind of come across as being on your side. So we've talked about being a feeder for their market, about complementing, increasing footfall, and so on. And also, once we had spoken to them about our market, and they were initially extremely hostile and were threatening all sorts of action against us, they then were talking about, well, why don't you use our voids? Why don't you use our stalls? And it became kind of a we were then trying to defend the use of our own building, which is obviously a key, really important thing to us. It's part of our own sustainability as well. So it's funny how things can turn out.
Yeah, just to say, it does sound really positive, and just a couple of things. One is, I've typed in a thing saying there is a one-page summary of Acton Market, which condenses some of the key points in about 500 words, I think, on the DTA website, in case that's of any help. And the only other thing is just some thoughts again about whether or not it's worth considering, like getting a list of people signing, yeah, we'd love to have this market, we'd love to have the cafe, maybe a few community groups to support you.
Thank you, and it's absolutely, it's invaluable to us, that. And also, as your film showed, and I've said repeatedly on this course, I think it's the stories people tell as well about how the market helps them in all sorts of ways. And I think markets, with some imagination and some energy, can bring, what we're hoping is bring a town centre alive and turn it from being a desert, as it is in Shipley, into being the kind of what it should be, which is the social hub of the area, as well as the economic hub. One thing we're really struggling with, and I spoke to Jess at a great length about this in London, is working with unemployed people on helping them develop their business ideas. And we've got all sorts of ruses about helping them do that and test trading without threatening their benefits. But if anybody, or of anyone who's managed to get get more clarity on this, really, of how we can help unemployed people test trade. Obviously, the risk of them losing their benefits now are going to be huge, so we have to tread very carefully.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for pitching at such short notice. I've put a link to the Acton page into the chat box from the DTA website, or you can go to the DTA website and just type in Acton, and it should tell you, it should take you to that page then. I did have a few questions, but they seem a bit practical after that, so maybe I'll catch up with you afterwards. Jess, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish off the markets thing with a couple of other examples. I hope you can hear me. The Rathbone Market one, this is what I wanted to mention earlier. This is a proposal from Newham to take over Rathbone Market, which is going to be closed and redeveloped as a site in about 1.5 years' time. And they're going to take it over and encourage meanwhile uses on the market. And part of their purpose is to encourage local people to get involved in the meanwhile competition that's going on to take over a range of empty shops that have been identified. So interestingly, using the market to test out potential meanwhile uses, which will then go in to be meanwhile uses of the shops when the market is redeveloped, and then hopefully might generate some permanent uses, or so it's really seeing meanwhile as one of the tools in a kind of regeneration box that isn't just about how do we get from now a dead space to some future kind of cultural quarter or some exciting master planned vision, and much more about let's just do something right now with some resources that we've got and the minimum risk, and then move and then envisage some potential future, but let's just kind of do it. And they have done that. They've taken over the market, and they're going to have a special event to bring together all the kind of professional competitors for this meanwhile competition, people, architects, etc., with local residents who may want to compete directly, or they may want to at least encourage or shape what the architects consider doing. So that use of Rathbone Market is interesting. And just a couple of other points about markets that have occurred to me while I've been listening. I used to live in a place called Kirby Moorside in North Yorkshire, and the people of Kirby Moorside were granted the rights to the Kirby Moorside Market way back in 1919, the local kind of esquire who owned those rights, 3 sons of his were killed in the First World War, so he wanted to create a memorial hall. He made the memorial hall. He said to the people of Kirby Moorside, will you look after this forever and ever? And they said, sure, but only if you give us the market rights as well, which was a fantastic thing for them to do back in 1919, because it means that the memorial hall is still working. The market underpins the building, so any repairs and so on needed on the building. They make £20,000 a year, and they use that to underpin their other work. So that was, I always thought, a great example of a different kind of use of markets as a sort of cash cow almost. And again, that one's just the right to run the market rather than the actual running of it. And then one last thing is that I spent a lot of time doing community development and community outreach work, and the best thing that ever worked for us was a stall on Deptford Market. So, you know, just the idea that actually all of us should be out there with stalls, talking to people. Every trust needs to be out to have a sort of public window, and I think that's one of the most important things that's come out through this conversation. So various different markets. Okay, I'll stop there.
Speak in and add, if that's okay. I've just been scanning my last appeal to Kickstart, and one of the key pictures I put in which attracted them was that a lot of the schemes they've run, because of the business failure rate, have left people very dejected, and that's something we picked up on. And what we're claiming, I hope it's true, is that our market, that it's not about success or failure, it's about people trying something out. So we made it, you know, in my pitch I was saying what we don't want is between 30 and 50% of people walking away with a sense of failure, but with a sense that they tried something else and had, you know, a good time in doing it. And it was low risk, high fun, a social and learning experience that people can walk away from and take something away with it, whether their idea worked or not. So as opposed to setting up a business and taking on all the risk of that of a 9-to-5 business, and the consequences, of course, for at least a third of people who get involved are quite unpleasant. And it's that's something they really picked up on. I think they as Kickstart, it's frustrating and quite depressing to see so many people, especially in this economic climate, leaving their program feeling worse than when they started. And hopefully our project, which aims to be really upbeat and fun, will help to turn that around a little bit.
Hi, that's great to hear that, because I think that is important. Just to add to that, there are definitely some people at Acton Market who are not there with the view that they're going to make successful business and make a lot of money, etc. Because I've seen some and talked to some of them, and some of them are there because they want to show that they can do something rather than sit at home. You know, they can sort of interact with the public, they can interact with the other stallholders, they become part of the community, and they're not necessarily doing it because they want to be a successful business person and whatever. Maybe, you know, they're doing the limit of what they can do, but that's like really important to them. The fact they get respect from running the market. And I think that's a really good angle to the pitch that you've already highlighted, which is that it is about giving people opportunities, and some of the people will take the opportunity because they want to run a business, but others will learn how to deal with the public, how to, you know, sort of maybe improve their numeracy or literacy, you know, through handling stock and money or interacting with the community. And maybe sort of single parents could go in and run a stall part-time, making it very convenient for them. That's another thing we find in the market, is that for lone parents or people with childcare responsibilities, they go along with them. One day they might, or for now, they might be able to pop away and their aunt or uncle comes to look after the stall. So it can be a bit of a family sort of engagement thing. So there's loads of things like that, that social capital that I think is definitely what a market can offer, and also it's good to get across to people. Plus, of course, if you have information about, where people could be fed into, such as like the Prince's Trust, it was a young person up to 30, I think it is, who wants to develop their business, or I don't know an awful lot about Unlimited. I expect Hugh does, but I think they got business startup funding, etc. But as you say, lots of people are doing it for a lot of reasons, not just to become a business person.
Absolutely, and there's a big history in this country around fear of failure, and there's a lot of research into why in certain places, in certain areas, we're less likely to set up new businesses and that kind of thing usually compared to the Americans. I'm going to post a link, Paul, to you just now around Enterprise UK have done a lot of research into this and overcoming that fear of failure and turning it into sort of good to try, and trying in itself is a learning and developing experience. It's certainly part of the meanwhile philosophy and that kind of thing, and something I think, without overcomplicating your pitch, of course, that you could well weave in on Tuesday when you see Kickstart. There is a lot of, I quite rate the Enterprise and Enterprise UK and young enterprise people. I think that they're doing good work, and if you can link into them, then I think that's useful as well. I think I have some contacts there, so come back to me on that if I can ever remember them.
Just one thing I wanted to add, actually, in terms of the different groups. I'm not sure what the sort of ethnic diversity is in your area, but it's very, very diverse in Acton, in West London. And a lot of the people from different sort of backgrounds in different countries, they do have a market tradition. They do run stores, they do sort of go to markets, they do shop at the markets, and I think everyone likes going to markets, and that's a big attraction. It's the social side of things as well, but also it is an opportunity from people from other countries. Maybe you've come over as refugees or whatever. It's a way of helping them sort of integrate into the community, but also they do come with market traditions and backgrounds themselves and skills, so it gives them an opportunity. As I said, I don't know if that's a situation in your area, but if you do have a high sort of number of refugees or different ethnic groups, that's another sort of strong point, I think, to give them opportunities.
Great, thanks very much. I'm feeling like we're coming to a close now, so just wanted to thank John for joining us and Paul for pitching, and everyone who managed to struggle either through the snow or managed to work from home with dodgy headsets. Well done, and thanks ever so much for coming. I'm not going to talk about the final session at Wolverhampton now because there's only a few of us here, so what I'll do is I'm going to send out an email with all of the details on that in the next day or so, along with the link to the recording to this session. Jess or Hugh, I'm not sure if you've got anything that you'd like to add at the end of the session?
Me, but it would be good to hear from the people we've got left in the room, just what they thought of this session, just briefly, because I always like to have that at the end.
Absolutely. So hands up, everyone, please, and just give us some feedback, and then we can all go and warm up with some tea. So hands up.
Hi, yeah, it's Jez here. Thank you. Thanks very much. I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed each of the sessions and just the diverse range of enterprises that have been covered. And the marketplace is one that I've got no previous on, so it's been really interesting to hear from John, and also a rather nice coincidence that Paul was pitching. And for me, it was interesting as well to hear. I've contributed very much. I've been listening to the discussion about the pitch because I haven't got any, again, previous experience in pitching, but I've made quite a few notes on it. So I think it certainly has been useful for me. Thanks very much for all those that contributed.
Oh, can you hear me? It's Stephen here. I'm taking over from Philippa, so I know I've only just joined, but I found it was really interesting, and it's also quite useful to have John, because many years ago I used to work for Ealing CVS and dealt with Action then. It's interesting to see where Action has been going as well, so I found it really interesting.
I know Temi's having trouble because she doesn't have headphones here, so I'm sure she's typing away into the chat box as we speak. So Rachel, maybe over to you while Temi's typing.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I think I took a few things away from it. Found the bit about the meanwhile space interesting, and I've had a look at the website and made some notes. I did get lost in a few things. There was quite a few new ideas, but I've tried to make some notes, and I'll attempt to digest it after this session. Thank you.
Just a couple of reflections from me, I suppose. One is, I guess, to link back to the very first session we did with Steph and Kivo eBiz, a different way of making a market, but nonetheless perhaps some resonance in thinking about, you know, physical markets and virtual markets and that kind of thing. The second, it just reminded me that market maker is reminded me of my time in the city. It was the ultimate accolade. If you were somebody who was really on top of your market, you were called a market maker. I don't necessarily approve of what's going on in the casino, but I think the epithet does transfer, and what a fantastic thing to be a market maker. So all power to John, and all power to Paul in the future. I'm glad you didn't let me answer the question about the complex ethnic makeup in Bradford, otherwise we would have been here till midnight, but some other time on that one. Good session, I thought. Thanks, everyone.
I avoided answering the question about the complex about councillors, which is equally difficult, especially in Shipley, where we have 3 Green councillors, a minority Labour council, and a Tory constituency. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for the opportunity to pitch.
Well, thank you, Paul, for pitching. It's been fantastic, as Temi says, being able to have 2 such related pitches for this session, which I hope has made it super relevant for everyone.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, everyone. I found it very interesting, and you know, it's really interesting to hear Paul's experience and where he's at and what they're trying to do, and it sounds great. So good luck, and obviously if there's any way we can help from our experience, we'd be happy to do so. But I've enjoyed it. Thanks to everyone.